Welcome to the Raising Values podcast, where the traditional family talks. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify, and be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. You can support the Raising Values podcast through Patreon. Phil and Gillian are behind the mic, and we hope you enjoy the show. Welcome back. Welcome back to the Raising Values podcast. It's a super exciting show today, especially for me, because our first guest, as you can see, and then for our audio listeners that will get this on Tuesday, we have our first guest on the podcast this morning, and it is my sister, Phoebe.
Hello.
And my brother-in-law, Andrew.
Hi.
This show is going, if you've ever heard one of our camp shows before, so when we're out camping, this is going to be very much like that. We have all three mics out. We have kids in the back that are on their phones and watching TV, and we're trying to keep them entertained, but they're probably going to run in and out. We might have Andrew or Phoebe have to run in and out to kind of corral them. So if you've, like I said, if you've ever listened to any of our camp shows, it's going to be very much like that. There's just going to be a lot of chaos in the background. But again, it's a family show, so that's what you get. The other thing I wanted to say is, so today's episode is about addiction in the family, and this is a topic that's very near and dear to our hearts, and something that our family's walked through for quite some time, and I think even before we knew what was going on. Yeah. It's going to get a little dark because their story went down a very dark path. It will probably be a great therapy session for me and my sister. There might be tears. In fact, there probably will be tears. But it's a topic that I think is so super important to talk about. I think addiction and mental health is such a taboo subject in this country. And it's stigmatized, and people and families that go through this are looked down upon. They're a second-class citizen, a third-class citizen even, simply because the chemicals in their brain just don't work like everyone else's or another person's. Everyone has an addiction. You can be addicted to drugs and opioids and alcohol and sex and social media, and there's food. You could be addicted to all sorts of things. Yeah. And what y'all's addiction was opioids.
Yeah.
Was that yours
alcohol.
too, Andrew?
Any prescription pill.
Any prescription?
Anything.
And it was alcohol for you?
Yeah, when I didn't have the pills, I had to have something to replace the high, or not getting sick, so I had to always go to something else. Yeah. Definitely.
So I hope that this episode reaches someone. I hope you're not having to deal with this, but there are so many families that deal with this silently because they don't want people to think bad about them, or that they're lesser of a person, or their family name has been tarnished or whatever. Because addiction touches everyone, and I was going through statistics yesterday, and I don't know if y'all realize this, but the Department of Health looks, when they do statistics for addiction in America, they go down as far as 12 years old.
Oh, absolutely.
And so it's not always going to be your mom or your dad or your grandfather or your aunt or your uncle. It could be your child. Piper's 11, and so she's very much right there on the cusp of being a part of that statistic and that grouping of people.
Yeah, I mean, it could be your classmate, it could be your student, if you're a teacher.
Absolutely.
It could be anybody.
Now, and what they also look at cigarettes as an addiction in that number. Marijuana is part of that.
Is coffee part of that?
Actually, no, but
Yes.
caffeine is a stimulant. So caffeine.
You're safe, Phil, right now.
We all know
Moral
your
high
caffeine
ground.
addiction. We all know your caffeine addiction.
Right.
So let's get started because I know I can already hear like rumblings in the back. But what I want to do today is kind of go through your story, and we were kind of talking before, and I have to say this, Andrew, I'm sorry. This is not an NA meeting. You don't have to. You're not going to stand up and like give your story like that. But I want this to be very open, and I want you to really share. I'm already on the verge of tears because I don't think you and I have ever sat down and really like dug through the nitty gritty of your addiction.
No, I think you've only heard my story once. That was several years ago. I think Bailey was still in school before, and y'all came to Mississippi to hear me, but that was just a short version of the lifelong addiction.
Yeah, that was just a 10-minute speech. And I can always give my perspective as your sister. I mean, I lived through it a different way than you lived through it.
Right.
And my way was scary. Yours was terrifying.
Yes.
And see, I'm already starting to cry. I get chills all over
Should
my
I go
body.
Get the communal wool?
I know.
Right.
We said we needed to have tissue out here, and I know it's mostly for me, but
I wasn't joking, though.
Well, and what people don't understand is, and what a lot of people who are outside of the realm of addiction don't understand, that addiction is a family disease. It affects not just the addict, it affects everybody you come in contact with. The Walgreens you're stealing from, or the place you go to do your drugs, and it just affects so many people. Thank you. And it's 2-ply, so we're good, we don't have to use a lot. But when we're in active addiction, we don't think about y'all. We don't think about anything really except where to get our next high, and y'all are second-rate citizens to us. We don't care if you're in the room crying or begging or, anything like that. It's just, yeah.
So active addiction is when you're actually taking the pills or the drug or whatever your drug of choice is.
Right.
So you're both in recovery.
Mm-hmm.
How long have you been in recovery?
I've been in recovery for over 10 years. I had a relapse after my first, and actually, don't ever get your clean date tattooed on your arm because you never know if it's going to stay or not. Haha. But, since 2013, but I have 8 years clean as of right now.
And I have 7 years clean.
Yay!
Yep, it started when I was 14. Was when the recovery journey began.
Your recovery started at 14?
Yes.
When did your addiction start?
Probably 13 years old.
Okay.
Um,
Wow, that just blows my mind. Like,
Yeah.
I just think of Piper and, like, the stresses that she's having right now as an 11-year-old. I couldn't even imagine, like, that being compounded by an addiction to drugs.
Right.
Makes my heart really, really hurt.
It's scary because he started at 13, and I didn't start until I had surgery and I got a taste of what the pain pills were, and I was doing things to my body and to myself to get more. It's just it's different for everybody. Like we were talking earlier, you don't have to be a doctor or a lawyer. You don't have to be a bum under the streets. You can be a normal Joe Blow citizen.
I mean, you were high school?
High school. Well, right out of high school.
Yeah. It was right when
Bailey right
was
after
born?
Bailey was born. Yeah.
Oh.
And then
Yeah.
it was on to the races after that,
Was there anything before that moment? Was there you know how they always say like marijuana is the gateway drug or whatever?
Yeah.
Was there alcohol abuse or anything else before that?
What about you?
So for me, so it started as, I'm gonna be cool. I'm gonna fit in for
Peer
sure.
pressure.
Yeah.
So actually, my first time, I thought that I had got, high. I actually wasn't. I was smoking tobacco. So I kind of sit back.
Kind of like that latte last night.
Yeah. Thanks, Phil. I sit back and laugh, and it's like, that was just the start, though. Just like since then, I've been chasing, from the beginning. You go to sleep at night, like thinking about the next morning. What am I going to do? I'm out tonight. What about how do I get this tomorrow? Yeah. You know, who do I have to hurt? My parents or my wife or my friends? You know, how do you get money if you ain't got no job?
And I think too, you know, being young and going out every weekend, and we lived in a small town growing up, so there was not much to do except to make the loop and drink at the lake, you know. And at the time, being that young, I don't say, oh, I think I was an addict, but thinking back, absolutely.
Well, yeah. Hindsight's always 20/20.
Yeah. You know, there was no point at that time. I'm like, oh, I think I should check myself into rehab because this is going to get really bad. It was just, I'm having fun, throw up and do it again. You know, it was not, I didn't care what mama thought. And I know I was a troubled kid, but looking back, absolutely, there was alcohol and, marijuana. But I had friends, too, that I hung out with that didn't do it. Mm-hmm. Or who could do it and not do it again until next weekend, and then that became, I think right after my surgery when I felt that first high and I was, oh my God, this feels really good. I don't have to think about anything. I don't have to worry about the issues at home. And I told you last night, alcohol and drugs were not my problem. They were a solution to a problem that I was having outside, whether it was acceptance from anybody or, the fighting or whatever,
Or even probably accepting yourself.
Correct. Yeah, because I was overweight.
It wasn't an easy home life either.
No. Right. It wasn't. Yeah.
But I was going to say, like, just to contrast that, like, that first couple of pills you took I guess originally as the escape from the pain of surgery. Yeah. Like, I had the same experience, being prescribed opioids, probably Percocets if I had to guess, for oral surgery, and I had the exact opposite reaction where I took one and I'm like, I hate the way this feels. I want nothing to do with this ever again. So, I mean, it's just to further kind of the point of anybody is susceptible to this, there's no telling.
Yeah.
I mean,
until you put that first drug in your system, you don't know.
Well, and two, I totally forgot about this, and I would not consider you an addict, but you did some pretty hard drugs.
But even in that case, like post high school, pre college, I had that little phase. But even then, it was I would characterize as recreational because, like, as soon as I decided it's time to stop, it was time to stop. There was no.
You didn't have that pull to find it again.
So again, this is like, because I know you and I've talked about how, at least from our perspective, there seem to be, I don't want to call them addictive personalities, but there seem to be people who are susceptible to addiction, and whether you become addicted to pills or marijuana or alcohol or whatever else, something in your psychology predisposes you to addiction to something. Right. And then you have other people who are just not as readily predisposed to addiction. Right. That can literally just never feel the pull, so quitting's easy. Yeah. The only exception to that's coffee, because I'll end up in prison without that. But other than that.
I mean, and it's like a door that opens up once you take that first, that we can't close. I work at a casino, and let me tell you, there's some times that even just watching people play, my brain is just stuck going.
I've always wondered about that because there are people in there, they're drinking, they're smoking, gambling is an addiction. I mean, you see those all down the coast, as you get closer to a casino. Right. Do you know someone that has a gambling problem or something like that? So I've always like prayed for you to not succumb to that. It's got to be a hard environment to work in, where you're constantly faced with another addiction. But you can't go anywhere in life and not be faced with it. I mean, even here, we have alcohol out on the counter, and I know I'm not going to offer y'all alcohol, and I can't drink alcohol because I don't want to die. But, it's not something, the only thing here that you're going to be offered is coffee.
Which we will accept.
I mean, she wasn't even awake yet, and she was like, coffee.
I was just waiting until they woke up to start the pod, because you know how loud it is.
So yeah, I've always wondered, like, how you deal with that, but then I see it, and you're dealing with it so well. Is at least that's what I'm seeing.
And I don't know about Andrew, and I'm sure, but he works at a restaurant. I work at a casino, but you can't even walk into Walmart without seeing alcohol, and it's not that we're so strong that we don't think about it, because there are days I'm like, you know what? Forget it. I don't care about the kids or the grandkids or anything else. It's been a really bad day. I'm going to drink. Then I play that whole tape through. I have to tell Andrew, which sucks telling him things. Not like that, but bad things. Like, because I had a gambling issue at one time, and I literally had to tell myself and do something different to stop gambling, and yeah, it's hard, but there's a cycle. It's just, that's why addicts stay addicts, because once they use, they feel that guilt, shame, and remorse, and they just keep going and going, and then ultimately they die, or they end up in places they don't want to be.
Well, and I guess, like, to me, the thing you almost said that you didn't quite was, recovery is not freedom from addiction, because the pull is always going to be there. But recovery is recognizing that the pull is there and saying no every day.
Yeah.
Because that's literally, I know that's what y'all deal with. And, like, because of I used to work in the industry you currently work in.
Yeah.
I know that drug use is rampant in most kitchens.
Yep.
Like, if anybody is not aware that, like, in any bougie 4 or 5 star restaurant you go in, there's cocaine someplace. I'm just calling it what it is. Like, it might be the best steak you've ever had, but the line chef is like, he's halfway to the moon already and going fast.
Right.
Yeah.
So, like,
is that why you send your steaks back?
That's right. I know he can do better.
There's a little bit of white powder on the edges. Like,
right?
where did this come from?
You can order powdered sugar.
But I guess that to me, like, that's the thing, is like, it's not that there's no environment you can ever put yourselves in where it's not, the temptation's not there.
Right.
But it's the strength to say no every time. And I think what I've always found encouraging is that because the two of you have that shared experience, like, y'all support each other.
Absolutely.
In a way that I don't know if somebody else could if they hadn't lived through it.
Yeah.
I mean, you can understand it, sympathize with it, but you haven't lived it.
Yeah.
But the two of you both have.
And we support each other. He has his recovery, I have my recovery, and then we recover together. Because, without the strength from each other, we definitely... Yes, you can have your milk. I'm sorry.
No, he's fine.
But...
And, getting in recovery, you develop these tools to give you ways to deal with life being clean when things happen, death, or a close friend relapsing, or anything around you getting fired from your job, getting in a car accident. You don't automatically resort to, I'm going to go down the road to John's house and get an 8-ball of cocaine, and I'm just going to, mask my feelings today and get high. No, you learn to deal with these things as an average adult. You feel these feelings now where you can actually deal with them, these feelings that you pushed off for so many years, and you just mask them, whether it's alcohol or drugs or whatever. That these feelings, sometimes they suck, but you get to actually experience that, and recovery has, give you that opportunity for that.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, and I'm sure we've talked about it, but I didn't just use when it was a bad day. I used when it was a great day. I used when it was raining or sunny, or I wasn't even out of bed half the time before I was using. So I didn't even know how the day was going to turn out, for sure.
So kind of, this is the hard part. Walk us through your journey from addiction, when it started, when now you can look back and you can say, this is when things went snowball down the hill, to where y'all are now. Because I find your story to be one of the most uplifting, and it's just, I look at y'all and I just think, how in the hell did you get here? Because at one point it was like, I'm going to have to bury my sister. And I had to make a really tough call one time, and I still
I knew this part was going to come up.
I don't regret making that call.
Absolutely not.
Because I do feel like it helped. Yeah. But it was a very hard decision that I had to make.
The whole family was literally like around her while she made it because she wasn't having a good time with it.
Well, and outside help, because there's from my experience, because I can only speak for me, but I was never going to reach out and say, hey, I need help.
No, you weren't. And even when we asked, like, hey, what's going on? Are you okay? Are you all right? In between your dazed, stupor, falling asleep and drooling on yourself, I'm fine. I'm fine. Right. And it's like, well, I can't take you as an adult and just throw you into a hospital. That's not how this works. So I had to go through a different approach. But talk to us about what happened. Like, talk to us about your story, because what I want people to listen to your story and then go, oh wait, I see that. I know someone that's like that. I've seen these signs before in someone.
Well, and I think real quick, but Andrew had, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you had a very healthy childhood, right? I mean, it wasn't the childhood we had growing up. It was,
for the most part, yes.
Yeah. So anybody, like, because they always think, oh, all these addicts have, they start from a horrible childhood, but they don't always start that way. But yes, mine did. I love my parents, but hold on one second.
I'm on call.
That is me. Sorry.
It's okay. It's a camp episode. We're camping out in the dining room.
But my addiction, looking back now, started in high school, way before Bailey, and in fact, it was not just drugs and alcohol; it was sex. It was the rush of anything that would get me to a level that I was, I didn't want to be at, and then after the surgery, I started using more pills, and I was married to my second husband, and that's when it really took off. He was not an abuser. I've been in unhealthy relationships. He was an enabler, which is also horrible because that can kill an addict just as fast as the drugs can, in my perspective. And the call that Gillian was talking about is, she had to call the police and say, hey, I need you to come pick her up because she's going to die. Mm-hmm. And that has to be, and looking back and having worked my steps and working through everything, that has to be the hardest phone call to make as a sister, as a friend, as anybody. And thank God she did, because I went to rehab the first time. And, not all addicts go to rehab one time and they're cured. Mm-hmm. There's some people that go 55,000 times, and it just, in my case, I went a couple of times, but there were some things, and I know a
you
lot
can
of
say them.
Yeah, I know. And there's some things that,
given my disclaimer of this is going to
get heavy.
Yeah.
Please help him real quick, please. He locked your phone again.
No.
There's
the youngest of our clan is having phone trouble.
Well, a moment ago, he was very proud to tell me he farted in our bed.
Oh, awesome!
Right.
And I chastised him because I said only I was allowed to fart.
Growing up was very hard for me. I was physically abused. Mm-hmm. While I was pregnant, I was sexually abused. I don't know how they do it on here, but, the drugs made it easy for me to deal with the fact that I didn't feel loved by anybody. How could my parents do this? And how could my friend do this? And, I was overweight and I didn't love myself. How could I do this to me? So, hey, you know what? I'm gonna get loaded. Mm-hmm. Y'all were younger, and it was, they love my sisters more,
Oh, good God.
Here we go.
Therapy
session.
I'm the golden child.
And that's what I thought then. And of course, I don't think that now because I realize I am the favorite in the house now. But
yes, you are.
But I had to do things to get what I needed. Andrew and I have talked about everything that we've done together. Not together, but, we've talked about it. And there's no secrets between us. He knows that, I would sleep around for drugs, which is really hard because I was doing it even after my daughter was born. I didn't care about her. I didn't want her around. And I do love her. And I made some very bad decisions back then. Am I a bad person? No. But those decisions that I made of not sound mind, were the decisions I thought were best for me at the time. But the last thing that helped me was I was stealing from you, from my mother and my uncle and everything just to get, what I needed. And I had found this girl around here and she showed me how to shoot up and get higher. And we were doing things in the driveway of my home while my ex-husband was in the bed sleeping that I never thought I would do. Because you hear, the ones who shoot up they're the lowest of low junkies. And we're all the same, whether it's that bum under the bridge drinking that Mad Dog or whatever, the cheapest liquor, to the lawyer in the top doing that 8-ball of cocaine. There's no difference. It's different how we used, but it's not different how we, who we are.
The addiction is the same.
Absolutely.
When you get down to the bottom of the chemical part of addiction, it's all the same.
Yeah.
Well, and to reinforce what you said about how making bad decisions doesn't make you a bad person, to separate those out in a Christian context, your other brother-in-law told me something a long time ago in reference to you, back when you were still using. We all knew what was going on. We just didn't know how to help. But he told me a long time ago, he said, you have to be careful to hate the sin, not the sinner. Because it's not, he said, to hate the sinner is to give up on them, give up on God, which is not what we're supposed to do.
Right.
You hate the sin. You want the sin to stop. You want the sinner to stop the sin. But you don't hate the sinner. You love the sinner in spite of the decisions they're making. Yeah. And I think that is probably the hardest thing for families to remember. Probably the most important too, is that you love this person. You want them to get better. You want them to recover and to be the best version of themselves. Not for you, but for themselves.
Right.
But that's probably the hardest thing to remember when you're being stolen from and harmed and hurt is, correct, I still love this person. Yeah. I just want them to be better for themselves. Right.
And we already hate ourselves enough. We've been told, and we like, alcoholics don't like the taste of alcohol. They just like the feeling it gives them. But we'd already given up on ourselves a long time ago. At 13 and 15, we didn't know how to handle those emotions. And he said something about feelings, and feelings suck.
Yeah, they do. They do.
Feelings, feeling sad and powerless. Powerless is the one thing that sucks the most, is because I know I can stop, but I don't want to. But I want, it's just, there's so many variables. I don't know what your home life was like.
So
I'm trying to get it out.
I was kind of letting you go. So no, my home life was good. I played sports. My parents were there. Dad, full-time job. My whole life. Mom's a stay-at-home mom. But my dad's been a full functioning alcoholic for, God, I don't even know now, 20 years, 15, 16, so I lost count. So it was easy for me to pop open that cabinet. Oh, there's a fifth of Crown. Oh, there's some Seagrams. Oh, here, he's got some Sprite too. So I would do these little sneaky tricks where I would steal a little alcohol out of his, Crown Royal bottle and I'm gonna top it back off with water. He's not gonna notice. Well, that's not the case. You know,
He noticed.
You know that was early teenage years. You know, the neighborhood I grew up in was a lot of kids back then. There was no phones. You know, we had, of course, Nokia phones, but you played outside. You did things. There was girls. We spied. You know, we were typical boys. But, you know, it started with cigarettes, Marlboro Lights, for instance.
Oh.
Dad smoked Marlboro Reds. You know, so I steal Dad's cigarettes, steal some cigarettes from the neighbor. That was like the start, cigarettes. And then, you know, I hung out with the kids that I knew I could get away with bad stuff with. You know, I didn't surround myself by the people I probably should have. You know, and life just started going on. I started exploring different things. I think I had sex at 14, maybe 13 years old.
You're scaring the hell out of me now.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No,
But I mean,
It's a reality.
It's a
It's
reality.
there,
You
yeah.
know, especially nowadays because kids are doing things so young. Like you just said, I mean, Piper's on that cusp. Look at Phil. So sorry. Homeschool is an option.
Oh no! I just need a bale of concertina wire and to set up a firing point on the roof, and I'll be good.
But, you know, I'm going to say a few more things, you know. It started really early for me. And, of course, you know, I tried to hide it from my parents, but, you know, at the same time, I would get so messed up that I couldn't really hide that. I thought I was going under the radar, but I was right in the radar. You know, they seen the whole thing, and I thought they were dumb, but I was dumb. The first time I got arrested, I want to say I was 14. Went to a drug court, juvenile drug court at 14. And, you know, I thought I could do it. But then at the same time, I would find these little loopholes to where, okay, I'm going to get drug tested this day. I know I could take this pill and be clean. These many days later, you know, so that's when it kind of started. I didn't realize then that I have a problem until a few years later. It's like, wow, I was doing that, you know. So, but I got away with it for maybe 6 or 8 months, and then, you know, I got caught, and I had a serious repercussion. It was rehab at 15, and I was like, wow. Jesus. So I did that, and it's supposed to be a 45-day program, but they realized, hey, your dad's an alcoholic, he drinks. So in order for you to go home and go back to school, go back to high school, your dad has to quit drinking, you know, and he wouldn't do that. So I ended up sticking in rehab at that point for another 4 months, 5 months maybe. So I ended up doing a total of 6 months at 15 in rehab.
Was this like inpatient, outpatient?
This was inpatient.
So you were away from your home, away from family, away from everybody for 6 months at 15.
6 months, yeah. And I would get these occasional, like 8-hour pass, 24-hour pass, and I still wasn't finished. You know, I still had it on my mind that, you know, I'm still gonna get high. When this is over, it's not. I wasn't done. You know, I still had to set my mind.
You were just going through the motions of what you were being told to do.
Whatever the judge wanted, I'll do what you want. I'm gonna tell you what you want to hear, what you want to see, temporarily.
Mm-hmm.
But you weren't committed to it.
I was definitely not committed. I was still young. I still gonna have fun, right? But that was just the start of the path. Was being paid for destruction. I want to say 18. Shortly after high school is when it all went downhill. You know, it just started. In and out of jail. But mine the whole time, you know, I'm enabled by my parents. I'd get in trouble. Hey, Mom, I need to get out of jail. I promise this time's going to be different. And it never was. It never was different. I think in 2015, at that point, I've already been to jail 6 times. And then in that year alone in 2015, I went to jail 10 different times.
Jeez.
Yeah. So what
All
I heard
for
that,
what? What were you in jail for?
So I was in and out of jail for theft, possession of marijuana, possession with intent to distribute Xanax. Yeah, I used to go around stealing power tools to go trade off to my dope guy. Mm-hmm. And I despised a thief and became a thief. Mm-hmm.
But you hadn't made. I'm assuming like you hadn't made that link. Like you didn't see yourself as a thief.
Oh no!
But if somebody else stole them from you,
right.
Now, on the one hand, to a non-addict or somebody that hasn't spent as much time studying psychology as I did in college, that would sound unusual until you realize like there are certain personality disorders, which I don't want to say addiction is a personality disorder, but there's a lot of commonalities there. But like there are certain personality disorders like sociopathy, psychopathy, where if you were to harm somebody else, you don't see a problem with that. But if somebody like hurt your mother, you'd be upset, not because that person did wrong, but because that's my mom. That's out of balance. Mm-hmm. So like that's the strange dividing line. Is when you steal from somebody else to feed your habit, that's okay. But if somebody steals from you, that's not okay.
That's not
Absolutely.
okay.
And only the addictive personality can rectify that.
And I don't know what all was said, but the rationalization of I have to do this because I have to get what I need. But how dare you steal from me?
Right.
That's how we think. And I don't know what all you've said, but it's strange. I have two sisters. All three of us are very different on our paths, our journey that we are in life right now. I used to think that I should have been somewhere else in my life as old as I am. But I am exactly where I need to be. Mm-hmm.
Mom would always ask me, for some reason, I guess, I don't know, why the three of us were so different. And I would always answer with, I don't know, because they were raised in the same household that I was. They were given the same rules that I was. They were, upheld to the same standards and things like that. All the things were the same. But it wasn't until I saw is Jordan Peterson. Mm-hmm. He's like the greatest philosopher of our time, y'all. I love Jordan Peterson. He made the comment, or he was on another talk show or podcast or whatever. He does a lot of stuff. And he said, sure, we were raised in the same household with the same things, but your experience going through those things was totally different than mine. You took different parts of that experience and applied that to your life. And I took those same experiences and applied them differently in my life.
Right.
I don't have an addictive personality. I don't know if my other sister does. I mean, I do, and in some cases I do. I think my addiction is...
You're not susceptible to substance abuse.
Yes.
But you do fall into, like... I'm looking for, like, one overarching topic. What I call time sucks. Like TikTok, social media. Like, you go through these phases where you get... You get hyper involved in something that absorbs all your attention because it's relaxing, but then it almost, I don't want to say it becomes an obsession, but like you fall really, really deep into it, and then you'll have a moment where you like shock yourself back out of that, and you say, "Oh, the house is a mess, and my daughter's running around naked, and my husband's looking at me like like you have." I know,
2 days later.
Well, but like I said, like from my perspective, like I would say that. I would say everybody's susceptible to addiction to some level.
Right, and I'm not saying that I'm like on this pedestal. I don't have this addiction or whatever.
But you're the golden child. You said so yourself.
God, I am not.
Dear diary,
the golden
rethink
child.
This table, I have determined this table is just wide enough that her leg can't reach me.
Oh, it can reach.
It can reach.
I don't even know what I was going to say now. Oh, I don't like the feeling of what like an opiate will give me. I don't like, I mean, the hardest drug I take is Tylenol and ibuprofen.
Whew, settle down.
I know. I mean, it's on my charts and everything.
Earlier, Val said hi to y'all.
Oh, hey Val.
I didn't want to interrupt y'all mid-monologue,
That's
but
okay.
she did say hi.
I don't like that feeling. And then when I had Piper, alcohol, I did developed a allergy to alcohol. So anything with alcohol in it, I get hives, break out.
NyQuil.
Yeah.
She has to
NyQuil.
She has to take a
Benadryl with the NyQuil?
Yes.
I
chaser.
can't do any of that. It physically hurts my body to be a part of any of that. I don't know where I was going. Oh, I was talking about how the three of us are so different. And then I was thinking about our other sister and things like that, and how we all have our own, I wouldn't say addictions, but we all have our own quirks. We all have our own whatever, but we all grew up in the same household, same parents, same
Right.
everything. And we all took different paths. And I think we all took a path. This is going to sound really, really bad. We all took a path to escape.
Absolutely.
Here come the tears.
Here come the tears.
We all took a path to cope with what was going on in the home.
Right.
I didn't get the worst of it. I watched you two get the worst of it. And to cope with that was to make sure everyone was happy and healthy, and there was no fighting, and I was the peacekeeper. I was the peacemaker, and that was a really hard burden to carry. I can remember being super young and taking on that role, which is why I think I was the one that had to make the call to get you help, because no one else in our whole life would step up.
Protect us.
No one. Yeah. And there were people in our family, in our extended family, that knew what was happening and going on, and there were friends that knew the things that were happening in our house, and no one was there to protect or even just say, hey, what's going on? In fact, there were people who I felt like we should have been able to trust the most that were brought into the fold in such a way that was so harmful.
Yeah. And
continued the abuse of what was happening. Now, saying all that, I love my parents. I love them dearly. I got the best hug from my daddy yesterday, and it just warmed my heart so much, because it was just such a great, long, like, real hug. And I've dealt with that.
Yeah.
And I dealt with it in a different way. I wouldn't so much say I ran away, but I did. I ran away. I ran to South Louisiana. I did. In high school.
I would 100% say you ran away.
In high school, I knew I was leaving. I knew I was leaving.
Yeah.
And I knew that I wasn't going to, stay close to home and go to college at home and or anything else. I had no idea what I wanted to be when I grew up. I just know that I wanted to grow up and get out.
Get out, yeah.
But not to disagree with you, but I know from our conversations, like, just you fill me in on like what part of your life I wasn't there for. Like, I know that even when you were in high school, you weren't around the house much. Like, there was softball, there was friends. You were gone as much as possible. I was
also, I look back on high school. I was drinking a lot in high school.
Were you?
I was at a friend's house.
Boone's Farm Express.
It wasn't Boone's Farm. It was a lot.
But I guess what I'm saying
worse
is, like,
than that.
Really?
Yeah, Phoebe. Yeah, but really.
But this, and I'm not being funny.
And I wasn't an alcoholic. I wasn't like chasing the alcohol. I was chasing the escape. I needed to get out. I had, well, it wasn't just me, but you had come home. You were pregnant. You were going through your struggles. You were just diagnosed with bipolar disorder. There was constant physical fights in the house. Constant. Physical fights. I mean, I was injured, you were injured, mom was injured. I mean, there was always a broken bone or something like that. And then, our other sister is on her own path. She's now pregnant and getting married at 17, which was just this whole earth-shattering thing to me because we're twins. And now that means that our high school graduation, we're not sitting next to each other because now she has a different last name and she has a child on the way. She's married. She's moved out. And you're doing you. And at 16 and 17, I didn't like you anyway.
Yeah.
I didn't like you until we were in our 20s.
She didn't like me till last year, actually. Let's get that straight.
No, it wasn't last year.
No, it's been a couple of years that, we've become really close. And I think you talk about escaping, and yes, our home life was horrible, and I've worked through this with a sponsor, and she said, Phoebe, they parented how they knew how to parent.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
And that is why I tell everyone, give yourself grace. And our aunt posted something a while back on Facebook that said, and I'm going to totally misquote this because this is what I do on this podcast, is I misquote everything. It said, give your parents credit because they were learning too.
Right.
And our parents were learning. They were dealing with being a parent and being an adult the best way that they were shown. Right. And they didn't have great examples either.
No.
Well, according to our parents. I
right.
don't know.
Yeah.
I really don't know what their home lives were like. You can only go off of what you hear. I know that when our Nana came to live with us, she was an angel on earth. So, I mean,
this is true. This is,
yeah, I mean, this little old Sicilian lady, sure, you could be super scared of her. And there were times when Nana would say the S word and I would huddle in the corner going, yeah. Oh my God.
She could get mean, but it's hard to talk about, and I try not to cry, and I try to go to, we were watching Red Panda last night, the cartoon, and I'm like, I gotta find my happy place so I don't turn into this big red panda. But, Dad apologized to me not too long ago for the way he treated me. And I told him, I have already forgiven him, and I've worked through that. But honestly, and I didn't feel like I was enough for them to do anything. I felt like they just wanted me out of their way. Mm-hmm. They didn't want me to get better. They just wanted me gone so it would be better at the house.
Yeah.
And there was no love. I didn't feel any love. Sundays, I hated Sundays.
Oh my God, I told you about Sundays at our house.
I knew what Sundays were going to be.
Those were the worst. And the worst part of it, it was because it was on our way to church.
Yeah, on the way to church.
Every Sunday it was on our way to church. And then these horrible knockdown drag out fights would happen.
Yeah.
And I'm not lying about knockdown drag out fights.
And they didn't care. They didn't care, and I'm like, I didn't want to be part of it anymore. I didn't. There was a point in time where I didn't even want to live anymore. Yeah. And I ran to the bathroom and I tried to take care of that. And I can remember begging my dad to help me, and he looks at me and tells me, "You have to drive yourself." Thank God we just lived right around the corner. But
was this during your active addiction?
This was the start of it when Bailey, right after my daughter was born. I just didn't feel loved. I just didn't, and I don't even and until I met him, I didn't know what real love was.
No, you're right. Because I've watched your relationships with men, right. And they weren't
functional.
No, they were toxic.
Extremely.
Either they were fixing me, or I was fixing them, or trying to fix.
Yeah, there was no fixing.
No, there was no. There's no Gorilla Glue in the world that was going to fix those things. But the thing is, I don't feel like I have to try to fix him. Now there are some things he can improve on, but there's some things I can improve.
Pick up your clothes.
Yep, thank you.
Bring the right box to town.
Thank you. Thank you.
But now, looking back and looking at the childhood we had, and I have 6 grandbabies.
Yeah, which blows my mind.
I play everything in my head, especially those days where I'm like, just forget it. It's not worth it. This constant in my head is not worth it. I can't call mom and dad and be like, hey, this is what's going on, because she's going to be like, oh, well, you need to go to in somewhere, and it's your bipolar,
Right. And I don't want to drag our parents through the mud.
And we're not.
I think that the things that she does comes from a good place. I think she mothers the best way that she knows how to mother. And a lot of times that just grinds our gears. It's just kind of like, you could be a little softer with the delivery there.
Right.
But I certainly don't want to drag them through the mud, because things are different. I think relationships evolve, just like we've talked in past episodes about how our marriage and our relationship has evolved. Well, your relationship with everyone that you continue to have in your life is going to evolve. And just like the cliche, I always go back to these quotes, the cliche quote of people are in your life for a season, or they're in your life for however long they need to be in your life. And that goes for, hang on, I'm almost there. That goes for family. There are people in our family that are no longer a part of our family because of the toxicity that they deliver. And there are people that I keep at arm's length and only allow into the family when I say it's okay.
Right.
With certain stipulations.
Absolutely.
And as soon as they step over a line, we're done. We'll try again in a couple of weeks, kind of thing. All right, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Phil.
Does this need to be the talking stick or the talking roll?
Yeah, right, the talking roll.
We're going to throw it at you.
It's really hard. I do have to say this. It's really hard not to cry when you are starting to cry.
I know. When he's tearing up and I'm looking at him going, stop.
I mean,
when the man with the beard and the muscles and the army starts to cry, it's really hard to not look at you and be like, you're going to have to get it together, because the rest of us are not going to hold it together.
Yeah. Sorry.
So not only do relationships evolve, but people evolve. I mean, none of us are the same people we started out as from childhood. We have all reinvented ourselves and been reinvented by the people around us. And like that's the thing I want to make sure I sneak in here at some point is, like, Gillian and I have talked about the two of y'all several times. And like the thing I continue to be impressed by the most is, like, Andrew, I didn't know you when you were, prior to your recovery. But just from the time I've known you, the time the two of you have been together, you've both become better versions of yourselves together.
It's really unbelievable.
Like, yeah, and I mean, and knowing where she started in active addiction to where she is now, I can see this night and day difference from who she was to who she is now. And I only saw half of your life. Yeah. But even then, just from the point you started out at, which I think you'd already done a lot of work before I met you, but from there to now, the two of you both reinvented yourselves. You become the best versions of yourself. And I'm sure some of that was personal work, and some of it was probably you two growing together as a couple.
Oh, absolutely.
And, the main thing with all of that is change. If you don't change...
Ew.
And who, let me just say this. Nobody likes change. You get complacent doing the same thing.
Comfortable.
And you're comfortable, Yeah. Nobody wants to change their morning routine. Or nobody wants to change their nightly routine. You come home, you take a shower, first thing you do. Well, you don't want to change those things. But change is good. I definitely, me personally, I do not like change. But when I do it, it benefits me. It benefits people around me. I changed the job in 2018, and it just progressed, to where I'm at now is a big difference, and that was a good thing, I was comfortable, it was easy, the hours were good, and and here I am now. I work a lot, I do, and I'm trying to work less, for sure, but in from the beginning of my recovery, I did so many different changes. Change your people, your places, your things. Of course, you hear that in recovery, and that's very important. You don't change those things, nothing else is going to change. You won't change. Your lifestyle will not change.
Well, and to interrupt you though, I've always told people, no matter where you go, I am there. Like, you are there. An addict can go to the Sahara Desert, and if they want drugs, they're gonna find drugs. If they want water, they're gonna find water. Like you said, you have to be willing to change things, and we change our people. We hang out with 2 couples, and an occasional straggler every now and then, but those 2 couples are also in recovery. And they always say in the rooms, if you go to the barbershop, you're eventually going to get your hair cut. So if we hang out with people who drink and do drugs, and we're not at that place in our life where we're strong and mentally or spiritually, because it's not just fit, how you do things. You have to have a higher power. Somebody that, on the way down here, I was praying. There's a lot of things that my higher power shows me, and I'm like, no. And he's like, yeah. And,
Yeah, I've been there.
Yes. But I would never go back to the way I was. I God willing, because I don't know what tomorrow holds. We have a beautiful home.
I know.
We have beautiful grandchildren. We have a beautiful children.
Here's what I see. You could not hold a job.
No.
You couldn't even be in my house without stealing or being high.
You couldn't take care of yourself.
No.
Much less Bailey.
No.
And you own your car. You've held a job for years, same job. Mm-hmm. You own a home. You own a freaking home.
Oh, we do.
Which is not... That is... A lot of people can't even say that. They can't even say they own their own car. They can't say that not only do they own their car, but there's no fear of it being repoed. Right. Or, you pay your bills, your lights stay on, you have a dog, 2 dogs. I mean, you've come in such... I don't even want to say full circle, because... A circle to me means that it
ends.
Well, not that it ends, but
it goes back.
Like it goes back
yeah.
where it started.
Right.
You have taken this path. You're on a trajectory now that it. There's so much that y'all should be so proud of yourselves, because I am so proud of y'all. And every time like you post on Facebook or whatever your recovery date, and it's been 1 more year, I will always celebrate that. Absolutely. I will always celebrate that, because I remember what it was like to walk into your house and see you falling down on top of yourself. Yeah. I remember what it was like when you were manic. I remember those really, really hard times. I didn't know everything that you had gone through during those hard times until, a couple of years ago, which, broke my heart all over again. But at that point, when Piper was born, you were living in, in another, you were here, you were in La Ranja.
Right.
And you were babysitting her, you were high, you were stealing my jewelry, you were pawning my stuff and things like that. Yeah, I was so mad at you. And I wasn't mad at you because you stole my stuff. I was mad at you because you put my daughter at risk. But there were times where I was just like, you were the one I was keeping at arm's length. Like, I can't do that right now. And it's not that I didn't want to be there for you. It was just my priorities had changed. But now I don't know. I'm really grateful to have been a part of that process with you. And it wasn't an easy process. I am glad for the friendship that we have.
Oh, absolutely.
I can be a catty bitch with you, and I can be a hormonal,
absolutely
emotional person with you, and I know that we have that relationship now that adult sisters should have.
Right.
And had you not made the decision, because I totally believe that can't help someone until they want to help themselves. And it's not until that moment then will they change. Yeah. Will they see the change? And when you hit your rock bottom, when I had to call the police and say, this is her rock bottom. Yeah. I'm 7 hours away. I can't get her off the ground.
Right.
You're there. I need your help. Yeah. And not only did I need his help, but I needed his help because it's just like someone near in our life. There's nothing we can do until the law is involved. Yeah. Until someone with the power to say you're no longer able to care for yourself anymore. Right. Now we're going to have to care for you.
Right.
There's no way I could have helped you. Right. I could have said, Phoebe, you've got to stop taking those drugs. Phoebe, I'm going to flush them down the toilet. It wouldn't have mattered. You would have found something else.
Absolutely.
But it wasn't until that phone call was made and it started that snowball effect rolling down the hill of you being super pissed at me for years, which is fine. You had to be pissed at me, and I knew you had to be pissed at me, but I was going to tear you away from that life if it killed me. Yeah. If it meant that our relationship was no longer, fine, you're alive.
Right.
Val had a comment about that earlier I wanted to recall. I find that some family members don't make the call because they don't believe that it would help. Then you have the family members who feel like, what else do we have to lose in trying this route?
Right.
And I feel like, I don't know, I don't feel like your family ever, or I guess I was part of that too, but like, I don't feel like our family was ever in that, I don't feel like our family was ever in either one of those boats. Like for us, I feel like all the conversations we had leading up to that call, and like at least you and I had discussed this several times before the whole family got together and you finally made the call. Like when Phoebe was asking to borrow money from us and we both knew what was going on, and we finally,
because it was always $60.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, if I was going to ask for another amount, you'd be suspicious.
But always 60.
60.
Well, and I don't know if you remember, but like that was the point at which Guy told Gillian, I'm like, honey, we can't keep loaning her money. Yeah. Like, yeah. I told Gillian, I'm like, I think I know what's going on. You think you know what's going on. This is not helping her. This is enabling.
Yeah.
And that was something you and I talked about right before the show started, was
right.
Like, we know that what we're doing, even though we're doing it from a place of love, we know it's enabling.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to cut this off. And she and I both pretty much knew, like, in cutting off this financial assistance, we knew you were going to grenade.
Yeah.
It was going to lead to even worse behavior to chase the high. And we knew that, but it was also a function of, like, if we don't push this, if we don't chase the rabbit out of the hole, we're never going to get anywhere.
Yeah.
So we made the decision, no more money, no more loans, no more $60 to payday. It's got to stop. And it wasn't long after that we now know in retrospect, like, your behavior really fell off a cliff.
Yeah.
And then Gillian made the call she did. But I feel like a lot of family members, probably to Val's point or Valerie's point, they probably feel like, well, I'm just trying to help them, or if I call the law, it's not going to make a difference. And to me, it's like, no, like at a certain point, I feel like what family members have to remember is, like, I need this behavior to stop.
Yeah.
Not because it's embarrassing to me that I have a family member that's an addict, because everybody's addicted to something. But I need this behavior to stop because it's going to kill them otherwise.
Right.
You know, like, addiction only leads a couple of different places. There are no, unless you're like Iggy Pop, for God's sakes, but like there are no 80-year-old well-preserved addicts. No. You know, they're all.
I love how you say the word addicts.
Well, but addict. Like, they're all dead or in prison, and there's really no middle ground. So
and they tell us that, you know, addiction leads 3 places: jails, institution, and death. Mm-hmm. You know, and a lot of us have died, come back. You know, we've been in jail or institutions. Where else do you go from there? You know, but in being in recovery and you find people, you know, that are like-minded and similar to you, you know, then you have those ones that they go back out and it hurts so bad, you know, and...
Don't make me cry, Jen.
You know, what'd she say? She loves me to death?
Well,
no, it was me.
Oh, you.
No. She was saying she was glad Gillian made the call because it brought both of you into her life.
Look, at the time, I hated Gillian.
That was fair.
Gillian was getting my best friend taken away from me. And my best friend wasn't human. It was alcohol and drugs. Like, she was taking that out of my life.
She was taking your comfort from
Absolutely.
You comfort zone, comfort everything. I mean, you were hiding behind it.
Well, I mean, I was hiding under a trailer too, like that. That's where I would stitch. I
know.
And all of my friends and everybody in recovery. Well, I say everybody. Most people in recovery have heard each other's stories before, and it's like I can relate. There's nothing that somebody can say that we haven't gone. Oh, I've never done that. But I've done a similar version of that, but...
Maybe it's not, I never did that, but it's like, I could see that.
I could see it happening.
In the moment, that seems reasonable.
But, in being on this and talking to people, and I don't know, I don't care if it helps 500 people, if it helps one person, if it helps one family go, we didn't have a bad household. Why is my child like this? It's not you. It is them. It's something in them that they're struggling with, and you can't just say, she'll be fine, it's a phase, because sometimes it's,
or not even just say that, but say, they're going to have to deal with it, or they're going to have to get over it, or it's an emotion you're going to have to deal with. I think that's what I started off this episode with, was addiction and mental health is such a taboo and stigmatized subject in this country. We turn a blind eye, and because we're so embarrassed that someone in our family or our friends have a mental illness or an addiction or something, that we don't want to be associated with that, so we allow that person to go down that path, and eventually they're going to die in it.
Eventually.
Yep.
And in my head, I can't wrap my head around why we have gotten to that in this country, to where we think it's okay to just devalue someone's life because their brain works differently. And I see it, this is not a good thing to say, but I see it in children. I see behavioral issues, I guess you could say issues. It's not an issue in children that are different. We have such a normal box we want to put everyone in, and it starts from when they're infants. And if they don't fit into that box, then they have to go somewhere, and people are going to judge those children, and it goes all the way through adulthood until that person is gone. But the people that we need to be huddled around the most are the ones with our mental illness. I have a mental illness. I have panic disorder. There was a moment in time, and I've said this on your podcast, Phil, and my podcast, is I could not leave the fetal position of my bed because I was too scared to walk through the door. I could not walk to my kitchen. I could not walk out of my house because the fear of doing that was debilitating.
Right.
And that is my mental illness. It has been 11 years of working through that mental illness.
Wow. And
there are still days where I would love to run to my bed and get in the fetal position and just stay there.
Right.
And do what Phil says and just, drown myself in a book or my phone or something like that. But I can't do that. And it's because I have not, I used to. I now look at my mental illness as, this is just a part of me. This isn't every day. This isn't the rest of my life. Like, I'm not going to stay in the fetal position for the rest of my life. And people who are going through recovery, who have that light bulb moment of, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
I can't live like this anymore. Or a family member who says they can't live like this anymore.
Right.
Because the alternative is worse than them hating me. The alternative of them dying and not being on this earth is worth them hating me. And that is what I knew you hated me. And I knew you hated me for years. And I was okay with that.
Yeah.
Totally fine. You're alive.
Right. And that's what we do. And, we say in recovery, if they're pissed off, we did something right. If a friend calls me and says, hey, can I borrow $10 for gas? No, I'll give you gas. I don't need you give me gas. I need the money. Well, if you're mad at me that I've probably saved you for a little more time going buying dope then, you know, because if you don't want gas, then you really just want the money. We know, you know, like.
Yeah. I just think that, you know, addiction is the topic that we're discussing today, but the larger umbrella is mental illness.
Absolutely.
And I really am such an advocate for mental illness. Like, I want people to understand my journey through mental illness, your journey, Andrew and Phoebe, and then there's just a slew of other illnesses that people deal with on the daily that it's just so sad to see someone of quote unquote normal brain function down them, you know, or drag them through the mud or whatever.
You said earlier, like you were wrestling with this idea of like, why is society so embarrassed? Why are families so embarrassed of addiction or mental illness or any of these things? And while you were saying it, I had a thought and then I recanted it. I started down the road of, it's the social media age. It's like the Instagram post. When you go on vacation, you take the one perfect picture and put it up on the internet so you can wow all your friends. Wow, look at how amazing this is.
Right.
And that could have been the 2 minutes of sunshine in the middle of 5 days of storms, but it's the picture that looks pretty. It's the moment that we all strive for. But I don't think that's unique to social media. I think that's a societal critique, is that we want to go to church with the family all dressed nice and neat and present the illusion or the image to the community and our friends and our neighbors that, oh, we're this perfect little family,
right?
And then we scream at each other as soon as we get home. It's like what we talked about in the other episode when I said it's a Sunday morning Christian.
Yeah.
You're the most Christian on Sunday morning in the front row of church. But 5 minutes after you get home, if you act like pagans about to sacrifice to Moloch, then
in the bedroom, please.
But it to me, I guess I think that is a lot of the driving force behind people's internal embarrassment around. It's a family show, guys.
It's a family show. The natives are getting restless.
But I think that is responsible for a lot of it. I think a lot of it is we as a society want to present this picture perfect image to others of how the natives are getting restless.
Well, and you know, be careful. Get away. Okay, you have to be quiet. We have a special guest. I don't know if we have to sign a waiver for you to be on TV.
I know. Does your mama know?
Does your mama know? But you know,
we got to mute this.
Yeah, turn this down.
Because
you can't listen to it. You can just watch it. Loving an addict to death. That's what we say when you're sitting there going, well, I don't want society to know what's going on, so I'm just gonna love them and just quietly. And that's what kills us faster than anything, because not giving me money makes me mad, but giving me what I want, that kills me faster than anything, because you're allowing this behavior to happen.
Sometimes you have to be the hero that the addict needs, not the hero they want. They want you to be the person who gives them the money to help them out.
Right.
And what you have to do. I mean, I'm sure we're going to have an episode at some point about tough love, but sometimes it's what it requires. It's I know this is what you want, but I know this is bad for you.
Right.
I'm going to give you this, and you're not going to like me for it. Right. But one day you might love me for it.
Right. And when I decided to get clean, right before that, at that time I was getting enabled like tremendously from my mom, for instance. And the last day it was, I was offered this like program to get out, like a get out of jail free card. And what my mom said was, absolutely not. You're not coming here. You're never coming back here to live here again. And I was just devastated. Mom, what? Really? Mm-hmm. And that's what it took. And I was mad. I was really mad. I think I cursed her out. I hung up on her. And, but, here we are 7 years later, and her making that decision.
You want me to take them?
Was probably what
I want Pop.
Talking.
What was what I needed. I needed her to tell me, I'm not giving you what you want no more. That's it. You know, because if I got what I wanted, then it would have never ended.
And you have the best relationship with your mom too. You
Best
talk to her every
relationship
day.
now. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
I'll never move back there. Of course not. But that was the opening to something new. You know, it didn't just keep the door closed. I'm just going to keep going into that closed door.
Mm-hmm.
And I think too, and I've listened to you say this, and it was so foreign to me. When you were in jail and they could get you out, you were like, no. Like, that was your rock bottom, your aha moment.
Yeah.
You were like, no, I don't want to be let out because I know what I'm going to do, right?
Yeah. Well, so
That's what he was saying. Was
yeah,
Oh,
no, not that moment. That was the.
This was the very end when.
Oh.
Yeah.
At the
I probably
beginning.
bought us about 5 minutes with the uncle voice.
No, but she denied my first get out of jail pass. And so I took this other program, which at the time was the sheriff's rehab, which was X amount of months. And, you know, they don't offer that anymore, but this program is what kept me where I needed to be today. But throughout that 3 months into the program, I was offered a drug court, I want to say, which I could have got out probably the next day, but I wasn't ready. Like, I knew if I got out tomorrow, what would have happened. And I ended up staying, I think, another 6 months.
Yeah.
good for you.
I've never known somebody who's like, nope, I'm going to stay in jail another 6, you know.
That's awesome that you saw that about yourself and then decided that you needed to do that.
But I want to say something. I want you to know I love you.
I know you love me.
You know,
I am the golden
You
child.
are. I'm gonna have to really go to therapy after this. But if it weren't for you loving me the way you were and the way you did, I wouldn't be here because I was not going to stop at my own.
No.
And Bailey wouldn't have a mom. And you made that possible because you loved me enough. And I felt that. And yes, I was so mad. I was so mad. But now I can come into your house and you can walk outside and you know I'm not going to go dig through your drawers or drink the whiskey or, you know, or whatever. I serve drinks at the casino and I'm washing my hands before I even go serve the drink because I don't want anything to get on my skin to put in my face when I, forget. But I want to say thank you.
Aw.
And then I don't know if
I don't know how to deal. I don't know what to do with my hands.
Cheers.
I don't know if I've ever said that before, but being loved like that, that's, something we don't feel a lot. Thanking somebody loves me enough to do that. That's what it's about, and we've lost so many people. We've lost young people, and they were never not loved. They were loved beyond bounds. It's just sometimes they don't understand that this is a disease. This is just not something that we go, we're going to do for fun. Because I don't know anybody who does fentanyl or meth recreationally. We're just like any normal person. We just have this little screw up here that's kind of loose. Of course, I have a couple screws.
I was going to say, is it just that one? No, I'm
What'd
joking.
you say? No, I'm joking. But we just want to be loved. We just want to be heard. We just don't want to be put on the back burner because of who we are or what we do. You didn't say we were going to cry until we got on air, and I'm like, God. But I love that I can come down here and eat dinner with my uncle and my sister and, bring the kids and know that I have a home to go to, because even after active addiction, I was in a homeless shelter. And it was one of the lowest times of my life, but I stayed clean through it, because I had the love and support of my family who saw me, up there. And I think that's, for me, as a recovering addict, we just want to feel wanted. We just want to feel like we're one of y'all,
Mm-hmm.
and we are. We just
You
have
are.
a little twerk
You are.
up here,
I can't. There was a time in our relationship during your active addiction where I battled with my trust with you.
Oh, yeah.
And even after the babysitting moment when you were high and you were stealing all my stuff.
All your stuff.
There was still trust, and it wasn't the trust of leaving my daughter with you was gone at that moment. Now Piper just wants to come spend the summer with y'all, and I'm totally fine with that.
Right.
But there was still that twinge of, I trust that she can get through this. I trust that she's going to make a better decision or make good choices or whatever. And there was, maybe it's the perpetual peacekeeper attitude that I've always had. I feel like at some point it's the burden that I've been having to carry.
Right.
I did not want to give up on you, and I don't want to give up on my parents. I don't want to give up on my other sister or anything during any moment in time, except for like totally toxic people. I'll give up on them. But you were different, and I knew that you needed just to feel loved and accepted, and I think that is like the overarching message that I want to give to people is, yeah, you may feel shame that you have an addict in your family. You may feel all sorts of horrible things about this person. You have to love them.
Yes.
You have to continue to love them and tell them you love them and show acts of love to them. And sometimes your acts of love, we've said this 1,000 times already, is really hard decision, and it doesn't look like an act of love. And having your sister arrested is never an easy decision, and it comes with a lot of consequences. But any mental illness that someone is having to deal with, they just want to know that they're safe,
right,
they're loved and accepted.
Right.
And I think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think that goes a really long way. And I know in your case, that's all you needed. Mm-hmm. You needed someone to make the hard decisions.
Right.
And because, I'm trying to think of a way to say this without mud again, because of the
environment.
Well, because of the troubles that you had growing up and your life as a teenager and beyond, it was always met with a harsh punishment. And I don't know if those, they always say don't discipline your child when you're mad. Don't hit your child spank your child when you're mad and things like that. There was nothing that you were going to gain from your discipline.
Right. There was no lesson taught.
There was no lesson taught. There was strictly...
I'm angry and
angry, hurt.
I'm angry, embarrassed, and hurt.
Right.
And now you're going to pay for that.
Right.
And I grew up watching that with both of you, and I don't know. I don't know what was different about me, just maybe being on the sidelines. And I mean, we always used to joke growing up is I would watch the things that y'all would get in trouble for, and I would not
do it.
And I wouldn't do it because I knew I was going to get the hell beat out of me. But
that's right.
We do need to start wrapping this up because I have another podcast to do here in just a little bit. But
I'm sorry.
No, you are fine. But to answer what you just said, Gillian, what I tell Piper very often is every experience you have in your life is something to emulate or something to run from.
Right.
So you watched a lot of those examples growing up, and you made a conscious decision of, I don't like that. I don't want to emulate that. I don't want to imitate that. I don't want to carry that forward into my own relationship with my husband, my own relationship with my daughter. So every one of those experiences, it goes back to what y'all were saying earlier about growing up in the same household, but two very different experiences. Your own perception of your reality shapes that reality. Mm-hmm. I hate to use the hippy-dippy word lived experience because the connotation it carries with it, but it really is that. It's how you view what's going on around you.
It's
your
own truth.
It's your own truth. And I want to say, I know we have to wrap up. I do want to say this because this is about addiction. It is a family disease. You're not alone. And you're not alone. Mm-mm. The families are not alone. The addicts are not alone. And the phone weighs 1,000,000 pounds to pick up when you need help. I don't care if it's addiction or anything, family problems or whatever. Before you decide to make a split decision, pick up the phone and call somebody. I don't care who. I don't care if it's your neighbor, your preacher, your best friend, your mom, your dad. Tell them you need help. And if you don't know where to go, you can always find somewhere on Google or anywhere. Don't do this alone. You're not alone. You're never alone, know. And it's just, I know it's scary. And addiction is scary. And we will never be recovered. We will always be recovering. This is not a class or a test we have to pass. This is a lifelong thing, know. And I thank Andrew a lot.
I thank Andrew. I pray for Andrew every day.
All right.
You got big shoulders. You can handle it.
Right? But the perks that come with being clean and getting a family again, and getting trust, and that's amazing. That's an amazing feeling. That I'm gonna run to the store. You can stay here. It's like, are you sure? But you're not alone. You're not alone. There's always somebody that will be there to help you. And
there's resources in the community,
absolutely.
In almost every community now.
Absolutely.
NA, AA, there's
Al-Anon for families.
Al-Anon, yeah. There's always resources. Of course, we're going to put the 24/7 hotline number in the show notes, and don't be afraid to reach out. Of course, we always say this. You can always reach out to me and Phil. Our experiences in life is what created this podcast, and that's what it was born from. And I think this has been the most impactful episode that we have done on both podcasts. And I'm excited that it's not only just in the matter of facts and raising values field, but it's also going to be on PBN and all the networks that we are a part of. Love those people, love them, and support them, and reach out for help and make those hard decisions, because at the end of the day, it's always worth having them alive.
Absolutely.
Hate the sin, love the sinner.
Yeah.
And you can always reach out to us too. We know people in so many states through the program that we could help.
Absolutely.
And if we don't know somebody, we'll know somebody who knows somebody.
Yeah. There's been times, and I know we're wrapping this up, there's been times when I've called Phoebe and I've said, hey, I've got this friend who has a friend that needs help.
Yeah.
Who can you help me with? And so reach out. You have to reach out.
Yeah.
But anyway, so let's wrap this up. Thank you all for either watching or listening to today's episode. Thank you guys for being here. I was excited that y'all were coming to the house, but I was excited to do this episode with y'all. And
I'm going to go get more coffee.
The pot's loaded.
All right. We'll see y'all next week. Thanks so much. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.